All right, today we have one of my favorite guitars of all time, the Dean Dave Mustaine Angel of Death. This is a 2008 model, very early, about a year into his contract with Dean. This is kind of the golden age of Dean, in my opinion. When they were making their Korean guitars, they felt so good, and still to this day, it holds up nicely. So this guitar is all mahogany with an ebony fretboard. You got your binding and medium frets with Dave Mustaine's signature live wires. They're active Seymour Duncans with your 2 volumes and tone and your 3-way selector. Just basic bridge pickup, both together, and neck. And we'll check those out shortly. And cleans leads and rhythms. And this guitar is just one of my favorites of all time. I love this thing. I should also add, this thing is pretty old, 2008, and luckily I've been making sure I condition the fretboard, so the frets haven't been sharp for me. So again, this is one of my favorite guitars of all time. My first show was Megadeth, and seeing Mustaine roll out with this guitar in 2008, with Chris Broderick just joining the band at the time, it was so amazing. I remember he's just walking out playing that fat chord to Sleepwalker. And I was like, what's that guitar with wings on it? That wasn't in the catalog that I saw. I saw a black, a silver, the USA stuff, and then the Gears of War guitar. This was different. I haven't seen this guitar yet at the time. And then turns out this was one of his favorites that he used when he was with Dean for pretty much his entire time being with Dean. He played the Korean one for a few years. In fact, even recorded Endgame with this very guitar, this model, and eventually he got a USA one, so he stuck to that one. But still, this design was with Dave the entire time, the majority of the time, through albums and through live shows. He'd be using this guitar, and really, you get it for the paint job on this specific model, but you get the feel of his VMNT line. At the time, I just had the black one, and that took care of me forever. I still have that guitar. That was the greatest guitar I've ever played. And obviously, I wanted this one too, just because the look of it. In this design, they're angel wings, but right here you can see them been ripped off. And the whole thing about it is it's supposed to be hellacious, yet holy at the same time. I just love the design of this. It's metal for sure. Luckily, not just with this design, you get the whole feel. The ebony fretboard, the pearl inlays, the binding, the sound with these Seymour Duncans, and the stability. These Grovers have stayed in tune the whole time I've had this guitar and any of my other Deans. These guitars have taken care of me. And some people don't like the headstock shape. I've always liked it because I like 6 in a line, but there's actually function to this headstock. You have perfect string pull. They're all parallel. There's no deviation of the string splitting. It's all parallel. This is a good headstock design, even in function. So I've always loved it. I didn't get this specific guitar until I was an adult. I've always wanted it. I couldn't justify buying it when I already had the black one, and then I eventually got a silver one. So it was just the same guitar, just with this paint job. But I mean, if you're someone that doesn't have one and are looking and just would like one Dave Mustaine, yeah, I very much would recommend this guitar. It's one of my favorites of all time. They kept making it mostly through the entire time that Mustaine was with Dean. They did change the bevel and then a little bit of how they make the headstock. It's just some of the carving in it. You still got your pearl inlays, you still got your ebony fretboard, but it's just the way they were manufacturing them. They're luckily still in Korea, but they're just a little bit different. This feels the way my other guitars feel because I was buying them during that time, which is like the early 2010s. Like this is 08, I have an 07. The feel of those guitars, they kind of kept feeling that way until 2014-ish. So even though I haven't owned this guitar since 2008, I've owned it since, I'd say, 2017. And again, I've been taking care of it to the best that I can. Luckily, the frets haven't been sharp. it's held together great. I haven't chipped it. Very glad about that. Everything is where it should be, and it plays incredible. I got 10 to 52s on here. Very meaty. I think these are very balanced pickups as long as you have your battery switched out. Because I found out in the middle of recording this that I didn't change my battery for like a couple of years. So it was sounding good. It was just missing some of its sustain and I guess bite. So I thought I should try kind of re-recording a couple of the things that I already did and try to compare them. So you can hear what your battery sounds like when it's dying, if not dead. Well, if it's dead, it won't work. But if it's getting close to you need to switch out your battery, here's some of the sounds to that, and that's what you're hearing at first. And then here's some of the sounds with a fresh battery, and you can kind of hear the difference a little bit. The best way you can really tell is in clean channel. It was sounding really dirty. There was no clarity. And that was throwing me off because I've played in clean channel with these pickups for years. It really threw me off. And I was like, oh, it's probably the battery. And that's exactly what it was. Some of the cleans were sounding really dirty. So it's kind of a happy accident that I was recording with a battery that was about dead. So at least people can hear what these pickups sound like when there's not a lot of juice left in that battery, and still kind of get an idea of how they're going to sound through the battery's life diminishing. And then hearing what it sounds like with a fresh battery. So I think that's pretty cool. I think that'll really help just give people an idea of how these pickups sound. So the Dean Dave Mustaine VMNT is just one of my favorite guitars of all time, just in itself. If you can find one that's in great shape, I suggest owning one if you like V's, or maybe even the Zero. The Zero is one of my favorite guitars too. But it's just, it has all the spec I want. I want 2 volumes and a tone. I want 2 humbuckers. I want 24 frets. I like binding. And I want a thin neck. This is a thin neck. They call it a D shape. And for sure, it's pretty much what it is, but it's a thin D. It's very close, especially that's another reason why I really like the older Dean Dave Mustaines that were coming out in Korea, because the neck profile was very close to like a Jackson feel. They kind of bulked up a little bit through later in the years, but then kind of maintained its good thin neck towards the very end of the lifespan of these guitars. They did make a few in Indonesia, and they cut some corners. Just for example, the Indonesia ones would have these inlays, but they're not pearl. It's just some pearloid stuff. And they didn't put this bevel on the headstock. It's more like a block of wood. I'm just saying that that's some of the details that you're missing. The neck actually was a little bit thinner, so that's a plus on the Indonesia guitars. And the switch is a little bit different, and the volume pots and the volume knobs are a little bit different. They're a little bit fatter. I've had an Indonesia guitar or two from those lines, and I just prefer the Korean ones myself. But you'll notice there's some corners that were cut on the Indonesian ones, and luckily they didn't manufacture too many of the VMNTs in Indonesia, but the Korean ones are where it's at.